lot more trout reproduction in that creek from the Delaware River.
I don't think
Yeah.
she wants it.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, it's been a long time in coming.
Oh, yeah.
This project's been, I mean, this dates back to that ash spill up at the Market Street Power Plant in 2005.
Yeah.
So we started having meetings about land removals far back in 2011.
Oh, I didn't know it going that far back, but I'm
Yeah.
glad to hear it's finally going.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, you're looking at it happening, and you can't believe your eyes. So
Yeah.
that it's finally coming to fruition.
And all you have to do is watch out for a little breaking down.
Yeah.
I keep chasing one about from under the Saucon rod. Oh, my God. Big goof, get away. Go find someplace else to fish. Those guys are really good. You don't realize how big they are until you stand next to
Yeah.
them. He was on my deck the one time. It was like, I was looking to speak up and just taking a rest, I guess. I was like,
And really big wingspans too.
and he just looked at me, he was like, yeah, I'm not moving. Are you? Okay.
Yeah, that should be good. Only question is, too, is fire is just like smoke.
It's a mystery.
Little guys were down.
Okay.
Kathy.
No, 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 no. It's an agenda. I don't have an agenda. Agenda sheet.
No, I called the attendance.
She said, no, no, no,
For
you guys
members
are
of the
fine,
public.
yeah.
It says EAC meeting.
Right, first floor. Yeah, it's EAC.
Hello.
Meeting televised over the internet?
You have to ask him.
No, I mean over the internet now.
The township's not
Well,
televised.
No.
Hi, how are you? You Janine?
I am Janine.
All right.
I'm not
Sit
sure I should.
Wherever you want.
It's right here.
Okay, if I could have everybody in the audience just sign in so that I have your name, please.
They did accidentally cross it off, I think.
No, that was.
Oh, she signed it, okay, all right.
Should I put my real one there?
Yes.
Something going on, the fire department's been out.
Yeah.
So it's,
Yeah.
How you doing? I thought the ambulance went up to your house the other night. Stay on your feet, girlie.
I know.
Caitlin will not be present tonight. She won't.
Where's the kid at?
Which kid is that?
Her daughter wasn't
My
feeling.
daughter?
Yeah.
Victoria? I don't know, she's probably still eating dinner, or she's on her way here.
All right, we're gonna call to order the, July 18th, 2023, Environmental Advisory Council meeting in Lower Saucon Township at 6:30. Roll call. Tom Carosi present. Cindy Otis is
I saw you out there working today.
Sandra Berger.
Here.
Present.
The
Ian
trail was
Spur.
supposed to leave tonight, I gotta go home
Drew
and finish.
Jernowski.
I'm here.
Al
They were
Johnson.
supposed to leave last night.
Laura Red.
Here.
Caitlin O'Connor Sala. Glenn Kay.
Here.
Jennifer Helton. Kathy McGovern.
Here.
Janine Bonham.
Here.
Carol Snyder's here, our junior counsel, we don't have one right now. And our township solicitor, Lynn Treadwell, is here. I asked him to be here to answer questions about the ordinance. And then we're gonna- I'll stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. There's no executive session. So we'll move on to new business. Acceptance of the resignation of Cindy Otis. Cindy moved out of the area, out of the township. She's resigned. Are we done a formal motion in the past? I forget. To accept the resignation, or we just accept it?
You accept and then, usually request to send a letter for staff to send a letter.
Oh, yeah, thank you, right. Okay, so we'll request to send a letter to Cindy, thanking her for her service. I think she was on for a couple of years, and it was very helpful. All right, that leaves us with review of proposed ordinance 2023-05, which I believe is in the packet, correct? Mike, do you want to do a quick overview of it?
Sure, no problem. Ordinance 2023-05 is the draft ordinance that council authorized to be advertised and sent out to the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, and appropriate agencies for review. It's fairly similar to the ordinance that I believe the EAC reviewed last year, which was ordinance 2022-02. If you look at the maps that are in the draft ordinance that you have in your packet, there are 7 parcels near the existing landfill in the area of Apple Butter Road and Riverside Drive that, if adopted, this ordinance would change from rural agricultural zoning designation to the light industrial zoning designation. The other major difference, or the one major difference between this ordinance and ordinance 2022-02 is that 2022-02 would have made a landfill a conditional use. This ordinance would make it a permitted use. So those are,
Two new people here about there's conservation land in here on these parcels.
Stop interrupting and let him give his overview, and then you can ask questions. Thank you. Please continue, Lynch.
so as I said, the major difference between this ordinance and the prior one that you reviewed is the fact that the prior one would have made a landfill a conditional use in the LI zoning district, and this ordinance would make it a permitted use in the LI zoning district. There are some other, I will call them editorial changes that were made to this ordinance from the prior one to try to address some of the issues that came up during the litigation about the prior ordinance. So with that being said, the 2 major components of this are the 7 parcels that you see on the map that are also listed on an exhibit to the ordinance, and then the change from a conditional use to a permitted use.
All right, is that it?
That's it. Yes.
Does anybody have any comments or questions? Anybody
do.
on EAC?
I do.
You need a microphone?
Lynn, can you please tell all of us where the conservation land is and how many acres it is, please?
Yeah, hold on, let me pull out my map. parcels that are identified on your map as parcel 1 and parcel 5.
And can you tell us how many acres those are?
It's on exhibit B. Parcel 1 is 60.6 and parcel 5 is 118.7.
So it's 178 acres of conservation land, correct, currently?
Well, that's not technically correct.
No?
It's not conservation land. There are documents recorded against those parcels that are titled scenic and conservation easement. However, the body of the document restricts the use of the land. So it's not typically like a conservation easement that the EAC may have seen before where the township purchased one with open space money. It's much different language. The language in those two documents on the two parcels that we're talking about prohibit the use of those properties as landfill disposal area.
Okay. And then for people that are new, if you look at, zone 2, 3, and 4, you'll look that right across the street's the Lehigh River. And if you look at zone 5, you'll see Bull Run, which actually goes all the way up to my property, which is 0.6 miles wide. That's a very active stream. And there's another stream in here too somewhere. I think it's at number 6. And why can we, if something's zoned, if it's not conservation, whatever it's called, the current.
It's zoned, right now it's zoned rural agricultural.
This, I'm talking about 1 and 5,
Yep, they're both zoned rural agricultural.
but
Alright.
they have prohibited,
There's a document recorded against them that prohibits landfill, and I can't remember the exact words, whether it's landfill disposal or landfill activities on those two parcels.
so why, that's the fundamental question. So why can this expansion happen with that prior document? I don't understand.
Well, what we're talking about on the map is changing the zoning designation. The landfill expansion, potential landfill expansion is a separate issue. For the landfill to potentially expand, the zoning needs to be changed first, but then there's a bunch of other steps that they would have to go through if they choose to file for an expansion.
I don't have any more questions.
So I just wanted to point out though, so a lot of people here don't really know zoning things and the difference between what it started as being a special exception use, which would mean when the landfill would wanna expand on this land, they would have to go through all their paperwork and red tape, but they would have to go before the zoning hearing board, to get an approval for that. The zoning change that we looked at months ago eased up on that by changing it from special exception use to conditional use. And conditional use doesn't go to the zoning hearing board, but that would go before council for their approval. And there's a hearing involved, which is what was in progress until it got shut down because the zoning was invalid. So now,
That's not accurate. They were shut down for what reason? Yeah, that's not accurate. They were shut down.
deficiencies in the filing for the zoning,
The court found procedural deficiencies.
so if you're not a lawyer, you don't really know what that means, but, so it was invalid. But now this zoning is to change it to be a permitted use, which means it doesn't have to go to zoning hearing board, it doesn't have to go to council. And the whole reason for conditional use is council can place special conditions on different uses. And if you look through zoning, which we never have a book here, but there's lots of things that require conditional use. It's usually things that are more intense of a use, such as a landfill. You can't get more intense than that, but like if you wanted to open I don't know what the examples are, I should have brought my zoning book, but gas station or yeah, a nuclear reactor or anything like that. If it doesn't even, not that much. There's lots of things that go for conditional use that are nowhere near being a landfill, and that's what they want to take away.
Just another thing to keep in mind, we're an environmental advisory committee, operating on the assumption that environmental ethics and environmental protection are things that move us. And in particular, parcels 1 and 5 are environmentally sensitive. They're incredibly environmentally valuable, hydrologically in particular. And when we score properties for open space in the past, our score sheet includes things like bedrock outcrops, steep slopes, carbonate terrain, hydrological features, including wetlands, springs, and streams. I'm not sure if I mentioned carbonate terrain, but these parcels have all of that. Parcels 1 and 5 feed Bull Run. There are wetlands mapped on that mountainside. That's why I think there was the conservation, whether we want to call it an easement or not. It was deemed environmentally sensitive real estate. And a landfill, mountaintop removal coal mining is about the only other land use activity that's as destructive as this is. That forest will be removed. I know this ordinance is directed at just rezoning, but let's be clear, the purpose for rezoning is for landfill expansion. It's also why the conditional use is being proposed to be retracted on this as well. Basically, that land is going to be environmentally condemned. And it has a lot of environmental features to it that we have in our open space plan deemed significant. So I think from an environmental point of view, this is something the EAC should never endorse because it's just land destruction is what it is. It will not only remove the forest, but the landfill is designed with impermeable covers, so it will starve the Lehigh River and Bull Run groundwater recharge. Bull Run will undoubtedly be ecologically and hydrologically negatively impacted by this just by stopping the recharge. Then if we have landfill liner failure eventually, mindful that landfills are going to exist even when they're closed for centuries. And that waste is going to continue to break down, and leachate has the potential to be released. And so again, from an environmental standpoint, I don't see any reason why this group would consider endorsing this.
All right, anyone else?
Yeah, to get back to Kathy,
Yeah,
what
like-
Kathy was talking about. Get back with what she was talking about, so I could understand it better, is, are you saying that the zoning can be changed without the already existing easements being removed?
Well, the documents that we're talking about that are called easements that prohibit the landfill activities on those 2 parcels are specific to those 2 parcels, and they deal with the use of those 2 parcels. What this ordinance does is it changes the zoning designation. It doesn't do anything to the use, it changes the zoning designation. Now, if the landfill wants to use those 2 parcels, they would have to ask the township to lift those restrictions, which they've already done, and I think the EAC reviewed last year as well.
So that's the situation there. Okay. One of the things that I would wonder about is, it seems that the new zoning removes the requirement for our township engineers to review the engineering aspects of any landfill expansion that occurs.
That's not correct.
Well, what's correct?
Any landfill expansion would have to go through the land development process, which is where you get the engineer's review. What the ordinance did was, or would do if adopted, is take away the site plan process, which is the exact same process as the land development process. You don't learn any more in a site plan process than you do in a land development process. It's duplicative.
So our township engineers will still review the development of the land, just like they always have.
Absolutely. As would DEP.
And the host municipal inspection agreement will call for regular monitoring by the township engineers.
Yeah, I mean, there's the same monitoring, if an expansion ever happens, it would be monitored the same way the existing landfill's monitored.
But we're not.
I'm not talking about the monitoring of the landfill. I'm
We're talking about township
development
engineer
of the
review.
landfill.
Absolutely. Land development plan reviewed by the township engineer, comes to the planning commission. I think all land development plans come here and then goes to council.
Mhm.
I believe there's been a change though, and this is not gonna go in front of the zoning board or the planning board, is that correct?
No. What Mrs. Ray talked about before was the difference between a special exception, which goes to the zoning hearing board, a conditional use, which goes to the governing body or council in this place, and a permitted use, which doesn't need a separate hearing in front of either of those bodies. It still goes, the land development plan would still go to the planning commission.
So just to understand, the review process remains the same, like we go through the same.
The land development review process, the approval of the use process is different.
I have a question about the,
Do you need the
or,
word?
a complaint. The last change here where, a natural resource mitigation alternative is made available. And, one of the things within the text of that is that, the landfill, and it seems like this is only for landfills. This particular, part of the ordinance is only for landfills. Can provide, alternative, land to make up for the natural resources that they destroy, but it doesn't have to be the same kind of natural resources.
Is that the question for me, Mr. Johnson?
Yeah.
The natural resource mitigation alternative applies to all industrial uses, not just the landfill.
So,
So-
Alan, I think what you're referring to is item 3 here, where it says, the land proposed for dedication does not need to contain the same environmental resources as those resource protection lands on the subject property. And they're not going to provide those things. Basically, the land that they wish to put into conservation, and they proposed that earlier, is land that has experienced heavy land use. It's already impacted by the current landfill and the impervious cover. And so, of course, there are no springs, wetlands, or any of those positive environmental features. Back in the early part of the 1900s, there was a spring map on the south side of what was called Green Hill. Landfill was named Green Hill on topographic maps. There was a spring there, but when you put a landfill in, you basically put an impervious cover down at the base, and you put impervious cover on top. You cut that groundwater recharge area out of the system, like cutting the plumbing to your house. You can have a bathroom, but you're not gonna have any water in that room.
Let me just make one factual correction to that statement, if I can, Mr. Dombrowski. The landfill has not proposed any land to be considered as a natural resource mitigation alternative, because the ordinance hasn't been adopted yet.
Okay,
So
I'm
the
speaking to
land-
the plan we saw earlier.
The land that you're talking about is what the landfill proposed to put conservation easements on as a replacement for lifting the restriction on the 2 parcels that you discussed earlier. Had nothing to do with the natural mitigation alternative, because no one knows how many acres it may or may not disturb if it even goes forward, so.
So I'm just referring to that previous.
Yeah, but that was there's no land proposed for the natural resource mitigation alternative.
But they can do that. They can,
Yeah, and it goes-
substitute other
yeah.
land that doesn't have to have the same.
It doesn't have to
environmental-
have the exact same, correct, because how are you gonna find land that's exactly the same?
Well, you can look for it.
Right, well, I mean, there are other requirements in here that limit the type of land that they can offer as a replacement. And in number 4, it says, the land proposed for dedication shall be located within the municipal boundaries of Lower Saucon Township, shall not be within an industrial or commercially zoned area, and shall not contain any natural or man-made features that are inconsistent with the township's open space action plan and policies. So it does put limitations. You can't, they couldn't turn around and say, here's a parking lot.
Can I
Any
ask-
additional land that gets conserved elsewhere potentially could be conserved anywhere. You're not manufacturing new real estate with natural environmental features. One way to basically preserve the natural features that people in this township, by vote of open space funding for years, have valued, is this type of, are the amenities that this property has. One way to preserve them is simply not to go through with this ordinance and make it possible for the landfill to expand these parcels. Pure and simple. Easiest way to avoid a problem is don't make it. This is destroying real estate.
So
Yeah.
Like,
go ahead.
Another point would be that the body that makes the decision as to whether or not the land to be replaced includes the necessary items of the environmental easement is the Open Space Committee. The new Open Space Committee, which is not part of the EAC.
Is that a question?
I mean,
You're right. It's not-
Well,
see, ultimately, it's council that's gonna decide whether the land is acceptable or not. Right.
No less than anybody else.
to your point, Alan, section 6G, an applicant proposing to develop an industrial use within the light industrial zoning district shall be exempt from the natural resource protection rates in section 180-95. I don't know what that means. B, and be permitted to exceed the net buildable site area permitted by section 180-95. C, permitted net buildable site area. I don't know what that means.
That's why I asked them to be here.
That's why I always ask, why don't we have a copy of the zoning ordinance here, the whole thing? But those things, they determine net buildable areas on other properties based on, like if you have 10 acres, but 5 of those acres are a steep slope, 2 of those acres are a lake, things like that get knocked out of your buildable area. So this just says, those rules don't apply. They can build on anything and everything. That's my Reader Digest version of it.
Well, and that's a pretty good summary, and it states that those rules don't apply if they replace the land, which we just talked about.
It's
The
permitted to
replacement can be
exceed
anything though.
the net buildable site area.
I'm sorry, what?
And be permitted to exceed the net buildable site area
Right,
permitted by
as-
section 180-95.
Yeah, as Mrs. Ray just said, when you have your total site area, there are certain natural resources that get deducted from it to give you a net buildable site area. So if you disturb some of those, then you're going to be building on more than the net buildable site area, and that's what that says.
To your point, we are the environmental advisory group. Seems pretty clear where we should go.
Well, do you wanna make a motion if it's clear where we should go?
I can't vote.
Somebody who wants to.
I would move that we urge council not to go forward with either of these ordinances.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right. You wanna have
Respect-
a roll call?
Oh, hold on. Here's
We don't have a public comment on the agenda.
Respectfully,
Public comment.
I would ask that you provide public.
What's that? Or is it at the end?
I would respectfully request, this body to permit, input from the public, especially given the high significance of this issue. Also with respect to Sunshine Act guidelines and with respect to information that was disseminated prior. So I do respectfully request, to provide information to the EAC, which I think is germane to, number one, making a motion, and number two, voting on said motion.
Well, the motion's already been made. If you wanna make some public comments, you can at this time.
Thank you.
But the motion's already been made.
Okay, so, number one, I wanna point out, the first question was which about the street conservation easements. Solicitor Treadwell is indicating that they are termed easements. They're recorded in the Northampton County Recorder of Deeds as such. But he is insisting that they are not in fact conservation easements. I do turn the body to the language of, as Attorney Treadwell had indicated, of the entire easements themselves, which not only specifically prohibit landfill development, but they also specifically say that the properties should remain as much so as possible in the scenic nature that they currently sit. So it's not a conservation easement that says we only wanna prohibit landfills but will allow a gas station or some other industrial use. The purpose was to maintain those properties in the scenic and natural state that they currently sit. In addition, the conservation easements specifically identify the Delaware and Lehigh National Heritage Corridor as the purpose for placing those properties in a scenic and conservation, in a recorded scenic and conservation easement. And it states that they should remain, they should not be used for any other purposes, and it specifically states it only allows for the city of Bethlehem to do testing at the time the city of Bethlehem is the owner. They carry, that easement is recorded, so it was, when it was sold to the landfill is required to comply with those same conditions. So if you look at industrial uses in zoning, all of the listed uses of industrial use in zoning would not comply with the purpose of the easement to keep it as scenic and rural as possible. So to say that the scenic and conservation easements may not be removed prior to zoning would be directly violating the ordinance, or sorry, the easement that is in place. In addition, that easement created a public trust. The public trust is such that the entire lower Saucon Township residents and the entire Lehigh Valley, because the township made a public act by creating those easements, now are saying that we are going to enforce those easements. So the township has a duty not only to keep this property rural agricultural to comply with the zoning required to comply with the easement, but also to enforce those easements and not move forward with rezoning. So I wanted to point that out to this body in case you were unaware of that part of the easement. I think if you make a motion tonight, you should definitely include the entirety of those conservation easements as a basis for your decision if it goes the way the motion was made. That was my first comment. My second comment wants to identify specifically that this property has been historically subject to landslides and very unsafe conditions. You all may remember a few years ago, Riverside Drive was closed for years because the road was washed out and undermined because of rock slides and landslides. That is the exact property that is being proposed to be rezoned. With rezoning to a light industrial, any industrial use would compromise the current condition of those steep slopes, of the hydrogeologic features, of the wetland features, of the Bull Run. All of those things would be compromised, further creating a risk of catastrophe along Riverside Drive onto the railroad tracks into the Lehigh River. That was 2014, there was another huge rain event, which caused washout onto Apple Butter Road, which is the other side. And Apple Butter Road still has problems with washout and runoff from the existing landfill. The landfill has done a lot of work to try and keep their runoff within their footprint and not onto Apple Butter Road. Anybody that drives there now can see green booms that are placed at the edge of Apple Butter Road and the landfill, specifically to soak up all of the runoff that currently occurs. So that when you push up that zoning to light industrial in the area of Apple Butter Road that goes uphill on a narrower stretch with winding roads, you're gonna be creating an even larger problem than you currently have. So that is comment number 2, and I wanna point to the fact that right now Riverside Drive is closed from a very significant mudslide, rock slide that happened 3-4 different spots on Riverside Drive. It not only went across Riverside Drive, slammed into the guardrail, which was placed by the PennDOT when they closed the road numbers of years ago, it also went underneath the railroad tracks, and there's a huge hole that the railroad is trying to repair. There was a stream that went right from on top of the mountain all the way down across Riverside Drive onto the railroad tracks and straight into the Lehigh River. I can play for you the video footage of that as it appeared Monday morning. But it was pouring water off of the mountain Monday morning at 12 a.m. or 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. So the rain event occurred Sunday night, but we were still at least 12 hours after the rain event and still having water rushing down the Bull Run, rushing on the landslides, the mudslides, and all of those things.
Can I see the video?
Yes, you can.
And it rained on Saturday,
We just
Saturday night, Sunday was,
helpful. If I show it on the laptop, it's probably larger for you.
While she's pulling that up, I have a question for you. I thought I learned, and I could be wrong, all communities have to have two, I don't know what they're called, but you have to be able to get out of the community or get into the community in emergency. They have to have a backup.
Ingress, egress.
That's what I thought it was called. Is
It's
that
not a law,
correct?
it's not a law, it's a good idea.
But it's not, you know, because I remember having arguments with PennDOT, and they keep telling me that Hellertown, this is the back way to Easton, they have to have access to either Easton or Hellertown, should they need it.
I mean, it's
But it's
preferable,
not-
it's always preferable, right? But I mean, you look at that area of the township, all that stuff is really, really old. So when it went in and got developed there was nothing. Any
But
property owner that would come in
doesn't-
today
Correct.
and ask to develop a property, I'm pretty sure the saldo or the zoning ordinance would, if not require, strongly recommend that there be 1-2 ways in and out.
And I know we always talk about the size of a fire truck, should they need to get up in there.
Okay.
I'm happy to relocate this laptop in wherever position, maybe on top of the board there, so everybody can watch it, if that's okay. So I just want to point out, this is a photograph of Apple Butter Road, and these are the booms that I discussed that are currently placed along Apple Butter Road. And the current footprint of the landfill, you'll see that they were all dislodged in the mud. That's the way it looked 12 p.m. on Monday. So you'll see the runoff exited the landfill and was on Apple Butter Road. That is the condition of Apple Butter Road. That's the condition as of 12 p.m. of the entrance to the landfill. That is, that's the section, that where Reddington Road meets Reddington Road East and becomes one way or two way depending on which direction you're coming. This is the vantage point from the two-way direction looking towards the one-way direction. This was the first washout, as you can see there.
They had a bobcat on that water road for a couple hours, Victoria.
Yeah, they're still there.
They're still there.
This is, I believe, is the new entrance to the Bethlehem, gun range for the Bethlehem City Police Department, and Fire Department, which is right near that change. That's a close-up of the tree. You can see all of the mud, how deep it is. That's all the tree, that washed off of. Again, more trees. This is the, manhole, if I term it, that you can see from the street that goes down to show the Bull Run. So, from Riverside Drive. So you see all the debris. And that is the water rushing at 12 p.m. the following day. That is more
Still.
Riverside Drive. This is the major, the largest, mud rock slide. So this is a different location than where you saw. This is like probably in the middle of the Narrows. You can see the water running off of the mountain here. This here is Riverside Drive. I think that's a duplicate, I think. So that's the mountain, a closer look at the mountain. You can see the water, it's now become a stream, and this was all a mountain. This was not the Bull Run, this is not any current running stream that was part of the mountainside. This will show you how the water goes right over the railroad tracks and into the Lehigh River. So that's the railroad tracks there. This is all mud from the hillside, the mountainside. That's all the rock that went down. And there is how it exited into the Lehigh River. That's how close that mountain is to the Lehigh River. And that's all of this mud is from the mountain. That is Riverside Drive, a low section of Riverside Drive that sometimes does get some water when it's a typical rain. This is completely flooded and covered. That shows the section where, right where the railroad tracks are. Another section. That shows this is all Riverside Drive here. So it's like virtually the entire one-way stretch. That is a tire from the top of the mountain somewhere that came all the way down onto Riverside Drive.
Well, areas littered with trash.
Yes.
TVs, couches. Yeah, that's.
That was,
that would have been
just
there.
more picture of the rocks, so you can see.
I was gonna say.
Oh,
Sure. Yeah, they just dump it off there all the time. There's been some horrendous stuff there, unfortunately.
These are residents that went out there that day. On the road.
And it's been
I
going
think
on
that's
for
all
years
I
and years
have.
and years because
Thank you.
Thank you.
dumping.
clarify something. Forgive me if I'm, asking anything that's really been gone over before. Fortunately, I don't get to as many of these meetings as I'd like to, because of my work schedule. But, getting back to the core purpose of the EAC, basically isn't our charge to answer one question. Here's a proposed zoning change. Is it good for the environment? Is it bad for the environment? We've spent a lot of time talking about the nuances of, special use, conditional use, zoning change, what that really means. But it's ultimately not our purpose to interpret any of that, but simply as this is proposed, this proposal, good for the environment, bad for the environment. That's my understanding of the EAC's purpose. I appreciate Mr. Treadwell's comment about, well, we're not specifically voting on the landfill, we're just voting for a zoning change, but, please don't piss on my shoes and tell me it's raining. The only reason this is being considered, let there be no doubt about it, is for the expansion of the landfill. You'd have to be insane to suggest anything otherwise. But let me be a devil's advocate and say, let's say we're just looking at a zoning change. Well, even if we were to just look at that, changing this land from rural agricultural to light industrial in and of itself, no matter what you put on it that's light industrial, negatively impacts the environment. If you put more landfill there, which is what this is really all about, you would have to be out of your mind to be on this committee and deny that it's disastrous for the environment in this area. As those pictures and videos have shown us, you're talking about expanding the landfill to like less than 100 feet from the river and right up to a tributary that drains into the river. Again, I don't understand why we spend so much time even discussing it when it is so obvious it's negatively, disastrously impacting the environment in this area. And if we just focus on our charge and stick to that point, I think we can spend a lot less time on it. Obviously, the landfill company is putting a ton of money into trying people's minds. I get postcards in the mail every week talking about how, oh, well, it's really a good idea to expand the landfill. They're gonna pay tax money, this, that, and the other thing. But again, I'm here to focus on specifically the environmental impact of it. Really, these discussions regarding the nuances of special use, conditional use, zoning don't affect that decision. Can anybody tell me otherwise?
It was to point out how much more ridiculous it's been getting with, let's just give it to them.
I just wanted to point out, and what I said was done over there, I just meant with the video. There's two other critical things. The first critical thing is the discussion that taking away the site plan approval process it shouldn't be a big deal because we already have a saldo and it's just duplicative and it's not required.
I'm sorry, what's a saldo?
That's the subdivision and land development ordinance. So Attorney Treadwell, when he was discussing the subsections of this new zoning proposal, it indicated that, and I think Ms. McGovern, or Mitchell McGovern, identified that it is taking away the site plan approval process if they require a site plan in the subdivision and land development ordinance and DEP approval. So your ordinance currently requires that the landfill get site plan approval, which requires that the landfill follow all of the required zoning ordinances. Lower Saucon Township's zoning ordinances specifically call out environmental protections for air, for water quality, that are not in your saldo, your subdivision and land development ordinance. So by removing the requirement for site plan approval, you are taking away the requirement for the landfill to comply with the specific ordinances within Lower Saucon Township that call out environmental protections
That is
for the
100%
citizens.
factually and legally incorrect.
Well,
One
I'm
of
Well,
happy.
before we get into the details of that, I just wanna point out again that that's not something that we can make any decision on. I think that discussion is more for the town council.
Right,
Okay,
you're just
hold on,
reviewing
Link.
an ordinance that includes
Hold on. One
that.
person at a time, Link was responding, and let Link respond, and when he's done responding, somebody else can go.
Any land development plan that gets filed with this township has to meet both the zoning and saldo and all other ordinance requirements. There's just removing the site plan has nothing to do with the zoning ordinance requirements. The site plan requirements are almost exactly the same as the land development plan requirements.
So if they're almost exactly the same, what exactly is different?
The land development plan has more detail to it than the site plan. The site plan's like a big picture, here's my cartoon of what my project might look like. The land development plan has oftentimes 80 sheets of detail. Site plans do not.
And the site plan, when it's proposed, has to come before the governing body, does it not?
Just like the land development plan
So
does,
it
exact same
provides
thing.
more oversight
No, it
from
doesn't.
the governing body because it has to review a site plan approval before it even gets to saldo.
No, it's the same thing. The land development plan and ask an engineer. It's the same thing. Do you know how many engineers there are that have come before Lower Saucon Township complaining? Not landfill engineers, normal people's engineers complaining that they have to do a site plan and a land development plan when it's the exact same thing. It's just more expensive for the applicant.
All right, Ms. Hoffman, you've spoken for over 15 minutes, now we're on 20. Can you wrap up your comments and maybe other people will speak?
That's fine, and I apologize if my comments are taking up your evening.
They
The
are.
purpose of my comments, I'm sorry, they are?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Well, I like your comment.
I appreciate that. I'm simply trying to provide the necessary and relevant information for this body to make its decision, and I really do apologize
There was a
that it's
motion already
taking up
made.
your time.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate the ability to provide this information to you.
Thank you.
So that was number 3. Number 4, because there is a motion on the table, I think, I also suggest or recommend that this body make a motion to put their decision and their reasons for making their decision in writing, not only to the township council, but also to the planning commission who will be reviewing this subsequent to your meeting this evening. And I say that only because we don't want anybody to misunderstand or not know the specific reasons why you have come to your decision this evening. So if you do come to a decision that says we do not recommend this zoning change, it would be helpful for everybody to understand why. So, for instance, you can say, we don't recommend this zoning ordinance decision and we don't recommend it for the following reasons. And you all can make a vote on what those decisions are.
They can certainly are capable of explaining, deciding whether to explain the motion and how to explain the motion. The people at this table are certainly capable of doing that. Thank you, Ms. Optoff. Does anybody else like to comment?
Mr.
Please,
Croce,
come.
are you not permitting me to speak any longer?
No, that's correct.
Thank you.
Yep. You spoke for 20 minutes.
Yes, my name is Mark Sopolf. I live on Remington Road, not far from where the landfill is now. And on 2 occasions in this past week, being Sunday, I happened to have an opportunity to ride down Applewater Road on a couple of occasions, and B, try to get up Riverside Drive to Remington Road. And unfortunately, the road blew up on day one. The road was washed out and there was all this mud on Applewater Road. And so you really couldn't go there. I mean, if you went through there, well, I guess, you want to have the car full of garbage, that's good for you, but I didn't feel like going that way. Going down Riverside Drive to get to Reddington Road was absolutely impossible, because it was jammed up in a number of places, and they had the road closed. Now, you know what, so today I tried to go that way again, and it was still closed. And of course, PennDOT, I think half of PennDOT was down there trying to clear it out, because there was all kinds of trucks, dump trucks, front-end loaders, all kinds of equipment. So I took it upon myself to park at the scrapyard and walk on in there. And I was really in shock at how bad it was and what was washing down on top of that road and what they were doing to clear it out. So I find it really troubling that that, the town council would put forward a motion that would say, well, yeah, this is good, let's have these washouts, and let's have the dogs floating down the river here, it's good, it's good for the town, it's good for the state, I mean, we can make a name for ourselves here. I don't understand it, and it doesn't, pardon my, no pun intended, but it sure as hell doesn't pass the smell test. So you ought to be thinking about that whatever you're gonna do, because it sure stinks. I don't understand what is the motivation for you to keep on putting this stupid thing through. Why? Who's asking for it? And Mr. Trevor keeps saying, well, they're not really gonna do that, they're thinking about it, and then the next minute, because I was here at the meeting when he said, they're always thinking about doing that, and then a week later, Rambo, we wanna make the garbage dump, cover half of Lower Saucon. I don't understand this, I just do not understand this.
Mr. Alpert, we're talking about this current ordinance.
Well, okay,
Yeah,
so let's talk about this one, so why, well,
You can comment on this for a little bit longer, but if you're just gonna, make accusations and get upset, then we're gonna go on to somebody else.
oh, no, wait a minute, I was telling you what I saw.
All right, but we're talking about this ordinance.
Okay, so this ordinance, what I saw and what this ordinance is gonna lead to. So, I mean, that's what I saw, and I think that's a good idea, well, I guess that's good, your opinion.
I did, yeah, thank you.
And you think it's a good idea, okay?
Yep. All right, Mrs. Alcott,
Yes,
would you like to come up?
yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to address this group. I'm addressing it because I'm asking this group not to approve the ordinance as it stands because of the negative environmental impact it's going to have on our township. Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you. Mark?
At the last council meeting, I had made the decision not to waste my breath commenting anymore, but I will. I don't think it's on either. I agree with the members of the EAC that are probably gonna turn this down, because that's what I got out of it just in the conversation, plain and simple. Doing anything on top of that mountain with the garbage dump is a mistake and a disaster waiting to happen. I don't know where Don Louder is, but I was down there. I walked in there, I got footage left and right, hundreds of pictures, videos, water, all of it. She plans on somehow demanding that a geologist go in and inspect the mountain, because you can see the boulders moving. If you guys haven't been down there when it happened and seen the rocks and the mud, and the guys trying to clean up the railroad with the trains stuck there because they couldn't go through, you might have a different opinion. And as far as the Bull Run manhole there, it needs to get cleaned out. According to PennDOT, the road will be closed for another week to 2 weeks because, again, the road is being undermined. The water's getting under the road and washing it out. So it's a matter of time. It's a matter of time till that whole mountain goes and comes down. So I would advise the council, or EAC, whatever you want to call it, to just say, no, it's not recommended. But in the end, we also know what council is going to do against everybody's wishes. Thank you. Have a nice night.
Thanks.
Hi, Priscilla DeLeon. I just want to say that this is probably the worst rock slide there has been since I've been living in Still City since 1985. I can't wait till I have the opportunity to drive along the road after PennDOT cleaned it up, because they're going to clean up what fell down onto the Narrows, but the crevices and the washouts are going to be the details that we're going to see, and we're going to go, oh my God. And from what I could see, it's really bad. And it's a larger area. And what's changed, we have trash over trash over trash, unlined areas on that landfill. And I was one who kept warning them, it's too much weight, eventually it's going to have an impact. And I really think that happened. I was going through my my kitchen, the other couple days ago, and I'm gonna be sending them around. I found pictures from 1989, I know I'm old. That was when the original landfill, the old landfill, and that's, if you're looking at the box of the landfill, it would be on the left, on the edge where the tank farm is, up in the corner. They decided, the city of Bethlehem decided to cover it with a product called Naturite. And it was imported from New Jersey, and it was sewage sludge mixed with some kind of ground, whatever. And it was put on top of it, and we had a heavy rain, nothing like we did on Sunday, but it was a heavy rain. And there was actually 4 foot of soap suds coming down off that mountain. I swear to God, because I went out there with my car, and then stink, oh my God. I pulled in my driveway later on, and you could actually smell the wetness on my tires, and it smelled just like it smelled then. Anyway, this 4 foot foam came down from the top, down the side of the mountain, across the narrows, and went over the railroad tracks and into the Lehigh River. And they did get an NOV for that. And it was horrible, horrible, horrible. I found those pictures. I mean, they're not the greatest pictures because 1989 we didn't have the cameras as we do now, but anyway. So, and getting back to Drew, you had said something a little bit ago about on the Apple Butter Road side of the existing landfill, there was a stream that disappeared. It literally didn't disappear, they made it disappear. And I remember being on the landfill committee, and as they expanded and encroached into different areas for the different, I think they were phase 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever the phases were, they just kind of
Well, on the landfill committee on council, why did you stop?
one person on council. I never had the majority of
You
council.
did, you were president of
Sandy, oh my God, and what does that do for the council?
Every
Did you ever
meeting
look up the role of president in the administrative code? It says to run the meeting. Any other power is abusive. So if you're comparing me to our other president, please don't.
Can I just point out for the record that I've had some conversations with Mr. Hudson today and the township manager, and from the township's perspective, we have no evidence that what happened on Riverside Drive has anything to do with what the landfill is doing. I mean, anybody can have their opinions one way or the other as to whether it does or not, but I just want to go on the record for the township's perspective of saying that we have no evidence of that.
I don't think anyone suggested that,
I
but
think-
what we're trying to
I
say
think
is
Mrs.
that
De
this
Leon
is
just
a.
suggested that garbage on top of garbage on top of garbage caused what happened on Riverside Drive.
What I'm hearing is like, it's an environmentally sensitive area, and we're trying to protect it.
I understand that. I'm trying to protect the township from somebody coming to the township and accusing us of accusing somebody else of causing what happened on Riverside Drive. So I'm saying we have no evidence of that whatsoever.
That's right. In fact,
I'm
the
not
DEP said
accusing.
that they received 4.5 inches of rain, 2.5-hour time period. The landfill stormwater basins, all of which are south-facing side of the landfill, functioned as designed.
All I'm
It's
saying
more
is,
technology,
if you
that's
got
the
that
problem.
impression out of what I said, I'm sorry. All I'm saying is that the landfill's up here, and the water supposedly came from the North Slope Road, and I know where that is, and that's right underneath the maintenance garage, okay? It's
Yeah,
owned by
but
the
I'm saying
landfill.
is from
It's
protecting
owned-
the township's perspective, we don't know that the water came from the North Slope Road. Nobody knows
The
that.
DEP guy told me that.
Well, okay,
It's an
then
exact opposite.
attribute that to DEP, not the township.
I'm just telling you as a resident
That's fine.
speaking here, am I
Yeah.
allowed to do this? And my thing is that the water came down the mountain, the landfill owns that property now, they're responsible, so.
There were, did you watch the news? The whole Lehigh Valley, Bucks County, everything's a mess.
No,
There was more rain than's fallen in 2 hours and I don't know how long. The whole entire Lehigh Valley's a
I'm
mess.
sticking up for them, but that's fine.
I'm not sticking up for them.
surprised.
I'm trying to protect the township from somebody from the landfill saying that somehow we accuse them of causing this. We are not doing
And
it.
Schools voted for every landfill expansion.
Oh, here we go for a lesson again.
Let it go.
No, he likes me talking about it. He wants to catch me saying something wrong.
Trying to get you going and
Well, I'm not, I'm excited about talking about it, he's not getting my goat.
All right.
I really are not, it's like, what did you say? You piss on on my.
Let's-
I know, I like that.
I like that.
Don't piss on my feet and tell me it's raining.
So I'm just going on the record, I am not here to accuse the landfill of anything. I'm just stating what I know from my experiences over the last 36 years, and that's all I'm doing.
And that's perfectly
Thank you.
fine. I was just making a statement on behalf of the township.
Tom, can I revise the motion and then subject to the approval of the seconder?
My recommendation is you approve the motion, then if you wanna make another motion that says you want to either, write a letter with your rationale, or, is this what you're talking about?
No, I can simply make it into, I can
Okay.
read it into the
All right.
record right now as a revised motion.
Okay, you're something you've written?
Yes. And I can actually email it to Carol, so
Yeah.
the transcript
Right.
issues
Right.
are eliminated.
Do I have to
That's
retract
challenging.
my seconding?
No, well, no, you have to second it again.
Yeah, so can I make that?
Yeah, let's make it.
Okay, so the EAC recommends that the township council not approve the requested rezoning ordinance 2023-05 to rezone the parcels identified for rural agriculture to light industrial use to facilitate landfill expansion into parcels that are relatively pristine. These parcels have many positive environmental features that will either be destroyed or damaged by landfill expansion, including wetlands, springs, and other environmentally sensitive and valuable hydrological features. Parcels 5 and 6 in particular are important hydrologically as recharge areas for these hydrological features, including Bull Run, a carbonate stream at the base of the hill. Parcels 5 and 6 are forested and provide significant habitat for a very wide variety of wildlife, including fish, reptiles, amphibians, birds, and mammals. Landfill expansion will reduce groundwater recharge and possibly adversely impact groundwater and Bull Run through leachate leaks in the future. And I can email that to you.
Thank you.
Do we have discussion now
No, we just had a discussion.
before?
We just had a discussion.
Are you gonna reset it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'll second.
Well, if we seconded, do you then have another discussion?
No,
or-
we're not having
Question for Mr.
We had
Treadwell.
discussion. We're doing a roll call.
Why?
Because
I
I
have
said
a
something on the chair.
question, and you're being bossy
all
about
right.
it.
Are you following Robert's Rules of Orders or your own?
We have a motion, it's been seconded, we're gonna do a roll call.
You also have a community member that
So
wants to
that's good.
speak.
She already spoke.
She wants to speak, yeah.
She already spoke, there's
I don't understand the rudeness and why we're dismissing people. I don't understand this.
Sandy,
It's
you're-
unprofessional.
Sandy,
And this is every meeting.
Okay, hold
Sandy, you're-
on. We should let this woman speak.
I would like to speak.
All right. Well, if Sandy, deference to Sandy, I'll just, you can speak.
No, I have a question directly to Mr. Treadwell here. You said you were protecting the township against certain people who make false statements or something to that effect.
Anything about false statements?
And bank statements, but you were protecting the township. Who is the township? Am I not part of the township? Why,
you are.
you're not protecting me at all?
But you won't be sued individually, the township will be sued. So when I say I'm protecting the township, it's the township as a whole that I'm talking about.
Well, who is going to sue them? For what?
Well, if you make statements that turn out to not be true about something, there's the potential for liability.
Well,
I'm
what was
just
not
making a
true?
very
What
simple
was
statement.
not true?
I don't know if it was true or not. I'm
So
making
you
a
don't know,
statement that the
then
township
why-
had no evidence. I don't need to make it again. I already made it.
You already made it, he says. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
We're doing a roll call. Sandy Yeager, how do you vote on Drew's motion?
Yes.
All right. Ann Spur. Drew Jermanowski.
Yes.
Alan Johnson.
Yes.
Laura Red. Tom Carosi, no. Have some respect. All right, motion passes 4-2. All right.
Why couldn't you give it
We have no developer.
There's never any counter though as to why you support it.
All right, next we're up to, I said the volunteer.
Correct.
Respect people's. All right, now,
And follow your example of that.
we've sent a volunteer sign-up sheet around, for the fall. It's on October 14th, 2023. It's shared with, Upper Saucon Township, but we're hosting this one, Carol, is that correct? All right, so, I don't know how
I
far.
have it, it's right here.
Yeah, it's a little too early to try to.
I don't know why, yeah.
Okay,
I don't know.
all take it back and
Yeah.
at
Right,
a
next month or
future
something,
meeting.
yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Future meeting. All right, so that's good. We need a review and approval of the April 11, 2023 meeting minutes.
I have a comment about the minutes. Jason Benonis said to you that this committee, quote, threw you under the bus. That was a quote. If you read this, you will see that we did not throw you under the bus. But the one thing that no one has ever answered is why are we developing a new open space committee?
This is review and approval of the meeting minutes. So if you have
But you didn't
a
answer us
comment of the
then,
meeting minutes.
and I'm asking you
Well,
again, why is there a new
I'm gonna
open
make a
space
motion,
committee?
I'm gonna make a motion to approve, the minutes from the April 11, 2023 meeting.
I have one,
Well, I
I
believe
got
it's
one
one
correction,
correction.
one correction.
Okay, what's your correction?
On the last page here where,
Landfill, right.
Mark was talking, he said,
Why didn't you get rid of it?
he said, he said his piece to enlighten people, and it was spelled wrong.
Okay, you get that?
I'm not even.
She's short.
This is my first time at this council meeting, and I
Alright, did you
absolutely
get-
appalled at the
did you get
behavior,
the-
and I'm gonna keep talking over
Did
you
she get what I
until you
said?
listen to me as well. I'm gonna play the same tactics as you are. This is absolutely ridiculous.
All right, so I made a motion for the meeting minutes, second by Ian Spur, roll call.
We never discussed about filling our voting position.
Sandy Yerger?
Why not
So
do
what,
that?
we can talk about that after we do the minutes.
Yeah.
Sandy Yerger, you approve the minutes? Yes. Ian Spur? Drew Germanowski?
Yes.
Alan Johnson Jr.?
Yes, with the change that I made.
Yes, with the changes. Laura Wright?
Yes.
Tom Carucci, yes. All right, the meeting minutes are passed. All right. There's, miscellaneous business, public comment on non-agenda items.
Public comment or not?
Peace and kids.
My first comment,
Say your name for the record.
It's not EAC.
Victoria Octave Cordaro.
I think. Where
My
you
first
been?
comment
You're
would be, hopefully, find out why the EAC, is having the open space, I guess it would be called,
Reorganization.
I guess the organization, but also the task that you have always done, which was grading the properties for open space. I'm hopeful that we can find out why exactly EAC is no longer doing that. So that was number one. Number two, I did wanna, say that, thank you, for your thoughtful consideration this evening, but also, to request that you send your correspondence to the planning commission in addition to the township council, so that the planning commission has it when they review the same zoning ordinance next week. But I do wanna thank everybody for their time and consideration. Thank you.
Hi, Priscilla DeLeon again. Non-agenda item. Bringing up, even though I talked about it on the agenda item, this wasn't on the agenda. I'm talking about the phone that came down off the mountain in 1989, just to let things sleep a little bit better. There is a notice of violation, so I'm not talking out of my hat, that the phone did come from the top of the landfill, just so that.
Priscilla, my discussion was about what happened on Sunday, not what happened in
I'm just
1989. I
clearing
have
the
no idea
record.
what happened in
And
1989.
I'm making sure that you, as our solicitor protecting us, are aware that I have to use a notice of violation that clearly states it came from the landfill.
Thank you.
All right.
It was a dump back then.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn. Go ahead.
We didn't do, the Caitlin.
It's been posted.
Heading of new business here,
It's been
so
posted.
we can introduce
It's
new
no
business, can't we?
See, where's the new business?
Uh,
We went through that.
Item
We did
item
that.
5, old/miscellaneous business. So we have a seat open on this committee, so why can't we nominate a person to fill that seat?
Well,
For a
just
voting member.
according to our procedures, I think it's paragraph 7, it needs to be posted first, And then you can nominate somebody after it's been posted, but it's only been posted for a couple of days
Well,
now,
we
because
don't
council.
actually put the new person into the voting position, that's not the norm.
Right, you recommend the council.
According to the bylaws, you normally recommend somebody that's already on the board, so they'd
Well,
already be here,
No,
so.
there's, I think, if you look at our bylaws, I think it's paragraph
I am.
7. It's called the township manager has to nominate, or has to, post it, and that's what's
Yeah,
happening now,
you're talking
so.
about filling.
We can do it, next month.
So we would be voting to elevate someone from the committee, from associate membership.
First it has to be posted.
And then after it's posted, that posting is to fill the associate
Correct.
position.
That's not the way it is.
Sure it is, sure it is, Tom. Sure it
Yes.
is. As chair of the committee, one would expect you to know these
No,
things
that's not how I read
and to lead us in accordance with the bylaws.
When
It's not on the agenda.
filling a vacancy,
It's not on the
preference
agenda.
should be given to associate members.
We'll do it all.
EAC will make a recommendation to the manager, who will bring to council for report to.
I need something from you.
I'm sorry. Do you have a conscience or soul? I wonder.
Well, that's how we've always done it for years and years and years. You appoint a member that's already on the board. We got screwed over before with getting, losing out on being able to make any recommendation on a voting position, and we don't want that to happen again.
That's why.
Well, I
Yes,
don't think you
it's
will.
not that funny.
I mean, I don't think you will.
Make a motion,
I think,
somebody seconded it.
I think next
But
month.
you don't have
after
to
it's
wait to
posted-
get a new person onto the board, is what we're saying.
I mean, I think you have to follow the procedures, it's been posted, we'll see who puts in for, voting and non-voting, and this.
Then wait,
this-
wait,
yes,
wait,
yes,
wait,
like
wait,
the
wait.
record.
I would like
There's
the
a
record to
voting
show that I
position.
moved to elevate Caitlin Summers from an associate member to a full voting member of the Environmental Advisory Committee. She has a strong environmental ethic, she has a great deal of knowledge, she has contributed a lot of her time on road cleanups and judging properties for open space acquisition.
Shouldn't you probably make it an agenda item?
Yes, we have to make it an agenda item.
In an open bit,
There is no such
you can make
thing.
motions.
True.
Okay, but you're gonna get into, cause I've been through this for the last 2 years with council meetings, you're gonna get into what does the Sunshine Act require?
Yep.
And are you supposed to have on your agenda specific items that you're gonna vote on? I'm
True.
just trying to help.
Let us have
True.
input on our
True.
agenda.
Trying to help.
If we put it on the agenda for August, shame on me.
That's
If
not
you
what you
try and do
just
something
said.
now-
You just said you're gonna,
We're
we're
gonna
gonna
post.
have a post
Right,
for
right, we're gonna see
a
who-
voting and a non-voting
I thought we had
position.
two. I thought we
Had
two.
that been,
No.
had that been the choice, I would've put my application in for a voting position.
No, we're gonna put it on the August agenda, and someone will be recommended to council. That's the way it's gonna work.
What are you posting?
I think they're posting.
I don't know what they're posting. I assume that the manager has posted that there's a vacancy on the EAC.
It's
Am I-
just generic.
Correct.
Should it?
Non-voting
If this
or
person
non-voting.
doesn't come in as
It's
a
just a
voting
vacancy.
member, we're not
Just a
doing that again.
vacancy.
All right, it'll be on the August agenda, after it's posted.
We wouldn't be so verbal if we weren't so frustrated.
No, you'll get over it.
I
All right,
don't think so.
I
I'll get
made a
over it when I
motion.
get a new chair.
I made a motion to adjourn, is that the second?
That would be
Thanks. All in favor? Aye. Thank you all. Welcome.
This is not welcoming whatsoever. Everything's funny to you, and you're destroying our homes and properties. So nice of my hand.
Thanks, Sandy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're disgusting. I can't do it.
Between him and her,
Glenn, thank you for your comments. That was very good.
what environmental advisory committee person would vote that that's okay? I just don't understand.
It's gonna be fun.
Hysterical.
Mark, shall I contact you about that little welding job? Okay, sounds good, thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
Forgot this.
Thanks. All right, thanks, Carol. Thanks, Carol. Thanks, Carol, for everything.
That's fun.
So, I wanted to touch base with either both of you, or you, do you have time, or do you need, or you walk out? I don't know if you have,
Can I quick go to the bathroom?
Yeah, probably.
Thank you.
Well, I'm leaving tomorrow, but, I do want to touch base with you anyway, so.
I don't know how many are gonna come over and keep me company till midnight while I go back to work when I go home. And you,
Yes,
did you sell your car?
gone. I had so many people want that car, it was amazing.
Yeah, I needed the car before I knew it, poof, it was gone. I didn't get to talk to
I
you.
couldn't believe how many people stopped for that car.
Thank you for the correction.
That car had 170,000 miles.
Wow. What kind of car is that?
It was a Ford Escape, it was.
Thank you for doing that.
I don't think everybody does. Sometimes I
Finally
don't.
got myself.
Come on.
I thought, you know, I still got the turn.
Somebody's racehorse is gonna be pissed off.
I like it. What?
Like a horse trailer at home I was working on and I got interrupted.
Oh.
Was supposed to be in Tennessee last night to pick up horses.
Well, I'll wait for you outside, right outside the doors, okay?
Oh, now what?
I have to,
Do you have to spank me? Did I do something wrong?
No, I don't want you to walk to your car by yourself. I want to keep you company, that's what I'm saying, that's all I'm saying.
No. Finish. Oh.